Yeah, the beginning of the walk is just not as fun as the nature walk, you know. It's you got the cars, all the noise, walking on the concrete, but we'll get to the nature soon enough. That's when we'll really start getting that benefit. And I shouldn't say that it necessarily sucks. Now, I have been saved a few times. Like you can look at, there is a beauty to the beginning of the walk. You know, where's it gonna go? Where are we gonna go? The thoughts. How are we going to reflect and think about like what's been said? And I'm thinking, you know, it doesn't suck at the beginning of the walk. It's like, okay, we got out the door. It's quite great. And sometimes I've been saved too. Like I'll normally start looking out like the beautiful mountains around here in Kelowna. And you know, look at, and so I've been saved. My wife and I have been saved a few times. You see a weather pattern coming over to where we're going to walk to, and it's like, okay, this is going to be a shorter walk than we predicted, and spared ourselves, you know, some just getting soaked. Not that it hasn't happened before, but yeah, no. But these are just the thoughts and reflections of me on a walk. You know, just trying to build some know, like, and trust with the people viewing the content. You know, whether they become a client or not, they're just interested in the story. You know, whatever. Just get to know me a little bit. And with that, you know, we'll see where it goes. Around intersections like this, like I always try and keep my head on a swivel. Even though I suppose I'm not doing so right now necessarily, but you never know if, you know, when something's gonna frig up, breaks, you know, just fail, you never know. And yeah, I find it very important to always be keeping your head on the swivels in intersections and just around cars. Like, it would hurt pretty bad to be hit by a car, even if you're in the right. Yeah. I remember my dad, I asked him a question like years ago on that, like, well, if they hit, you could always sue or, you know, maybe get some sort of big compensation. He's like, yeah, well, but then like, would you, like, if you had just a debilitating injury, would you want that, like, over the money? It's like, I don't think many people would choose that. And that's not to any comment against someone who lives that way or anything like that, but you know, if someone has able use of their body and they don't want to lose that, it's, you know, it's worth a lot. Your body, your health. It's kind of nice seeing like the orchards, all the leaves off, the little farmers markets all shut down. Like, it's really a sign that winter's here, we're changing seasons, and you know, it's going to be exciting to watch it all spring back to life, quite literally in the spring. This part's here when it really starts to quiet down and there's not nearly so much traffic noise. This is kind of when you can begin to think a little bit, or have maybe less distractions. Yeah, well, I suppose my intention with this video is just to put some little parts of myself out there into the world. There's an aspect that's both extremely important to not only counseling, but to business, where there's like actually quite a lot of, I shouldn't say business, but marketing. And there's a lot of similarities, like for a client to stick with a counselor or therapist and get some good work done, like almost 50%, give or take, is, you know, just from the relationship that they have with that therapist. You know, people, how it relates to marketing is that like people purchase products and services from people that they know, like, and trust. Like, that's the kind of marketing psychology perspective of it. With counseling though, you know, people they know, like, and trust is a very just kind of cut and dry way of saying the therapeutic rapport. You know, do I trust this person enough to say something that's deep and meaningful to me and important to me? Do I do I like my time spent with them, or like, are they, do they make me feel good, essentially? And there's so many ways that could be interpreted, but the pace that they speak, the way they greet me, their sense of humor, their just essentially their personality. Like, do I like their personality as an individual, or as that individual with me, and how we relate to each other. And then so the know, like, and trust, it's like, can I trust that person with my story and what I'm going through? Right, did I just say trust? Yeah, know, like, the knowing part. Know, like, and trust. Well, if you like someone, trust them, you know why you do those things. You know of them. Perhaps maybe know, I guess, would be more so, what would it be? To know someone. Is that for them to be predictable? Is that like to know their tendencies, perhaps how they'll react to certain things? And whether you like that. Know, like, and trust. But yeah, essentially though, that's like the therapeutic rapport. Yeah, where to go next with it? Yeah, but yeah. So, just like my all-around intentions with the walk. So, people buy products and services from people they know, like, and trust. That's the nature of the therapeutic rapport. Yeah, we just did a big weave there. Let me just bring my mind back to the overall plan. That's the intention. So yeah, I guess just as things, that's really just wanted to get that point across. I guess just as things pop into my mind, I'm just kind of gonna, if I think they're kind of interesting to know, or it's an interesting thought, we could then use that. Let's see. I'll have a break from the camera and then I will come back. We are on the path now, though, for sure. And so, yeah, with know, like, and trust, like with this video, getting to know some things about me, what I offer people. One of those things is walk and talk therapy out in the woods like this. You could just be walking side by side. You can be by the riverside or the tree side, whichever one. And we'll just go for a stroll. Like, Mission Creek is a great spot to walk. Knox Mountain. Where else? And I'm kind of thinking like within probably between a 10 or 15 minute drive of 80% or so of Kelowna. That would be a pretty acceptable destination. But I'm open to others though too, truly. Like, if someone wants to go on a walk and I can go in the woods and have a good conversation with someone, I very likely wouldn't drive an hour, but we'll certainly negotiate. But yeah, what walk and talk therapy, or who walk and who walk and talk therapy is for people who aren't as interested in sitting in one room in one space for the whole time, having some movements incorporated, some activity, have some fresh air. Walk and talk is also for people who just enjoy nature. Not that if someone doesn't come, I assume that they don't, but someone really likes the aspect of nature in their therapy. Look, I'm kind of like looking behind me to see if somebody is watching me do this, because it's so cringy. But it's I think I might just record myself doing something, like just like losing track of the thought. And that happens. And it's like holding on to a very deep thought with 4, 5, 6 abstractions away from where the thought started. So it's like, okay, how do you find yourself? How do you get back to that point? In a reasonable amount of time. And sometimes it's easier than others. Certainly. It's kind of part of the job, though, I suppose, of being a counselor, like following along the client journey. And it's like, sometimes it's like, okay, they started this off somewhere there, and now we're here, okay. But like sometimes I'll go through 4 or 5 different big subject matters, a family component, personal component, a romantic component, but they all string together. It's like picking out, okay, what are the big, if I could summarize perhaps the emotion, the thought that almost condenses down each of those huge topics, and it's like something to relate to that. It's like then you can kind of follow the story. It almost like would almost be like a constellation, like out in the stars. There's the stars, and it's a big, like the Milky Way, like a big matte or cloudy look. But there's some that stick out profoundly. It's finding those and then working with them. If they're self-defeating, if they're unproductive, seeing what can be done about those things. It's a very, very fun job. It's really, I think my strongest asset in it is my curiosity for other people, just hearing different ways to live a life, and then helping people to overcome patterns that just aren't serving them anymore. It's incredibly interesting and very fulfilling too. Like there's like when you begin to see a client start doing some things that they said, I'd like to do these things a little less. I prefer to do that. It's feels really good. Yeah, it's like, okay, great. Perhaps my influence in helping the client realize these things about themselves is working with these people, and it's improved their lives in some way. And if the community I live in is, there's someone out there doing, like, living a little bit better of a life, happier, they're probably more likely to do little acts of kindness, contribute to the overall happiness level in the community. And that's the community that I live in too. So I want there to be more happiness, not only for me, but when friends and family visit, there's friendly people on the trails that say hello to them, and just to hold the door open for somebody else. That's a nice place to be. And perhaps if by raising the level of happiness quantile or what have you in the system, that is a good thing. I want to catch this before it leaves my mind, but there's just a little foot trail right over there, and I thought, what's that about? But it's it looked quite muddy. I'm not wearing shoes that I'd like to get very muddy right now, and I'm just thinking, okay, I don't have the tools to handle that right now as I would prefer to have. not even necessarily that I would prefer in this situation, but you get it. And like if I was wearing my hunting boots and I was in the mood to scramble up an embankment, yeah, sure, I'd have the tools necessary and the mindset. But it reminded me of just that, of, with counseling, and when people are processing, going through just reanalyzing patterns or tendencies or a direction they want to go, but they're questioning, the mindset that they have at the time, the emotions, their intentions, what tools they have available to them, what resources they have available to them. They might very well want to go up into that embankment and go see what's up there, but they don't feel ready to do that right now, or willing. And so, counseling's all about, okay, how can we equip you as an individual with the tools, that are specific to you, It's, someone might have anxious tendencies or depressive tendencies. So their tool sets that we develop together are going to be different looking. But at the end of the day, both parties will hopefully get up that embankment. Yep. Okay. It's just so nice when you see a scene that's just beautiful. These little white berries in these bushes here, open plain, or not really an open plain, but rather a little thicket in there. There's a ridge line going in behind it, and you kind of come around this way, and I've always appreciated this willow tree here. It's going, I'll probably get a better angle of it, but it's just growing out of the swamp area, and it's one of the only ones of that species, like right there, just kind of just stands right out. One of the themes of counseling, or not, rather, one of the interventions used in counseling. No, not an intervention. One of the concepts, essentially, of things humans like to have to varying degrees. One of those things is a boundary. And the boundary, quite like where the grassland turns into this little kind of roughed in area to that proper path, then there can be offshoots as well. Look how coincidental that was. It can be offshoots. Perhaps one boundary exists there, but not in this one aspect of your life, but not in this aspect of it, the main branch. Perhaps you're at a party and you'll permit more or different behaviors, or you're at some sort of just like a sporting event, whatever. You'll permit certain things, but then the main path, is maybe much more of a defined boundary, or an extra layer between the two, if you will. But identifying boundaries is a point that can help some people with counseling, or during counseling. There might be a family member that's quite intrusive in your life, or that relationship isn't serving you. There could be a friend. It could be something at work. Perhaps like these things can be like personal, relational to you, like others, or just life itself. And so like a personal, and I'm kind of beating around the bush, or kind of backtracking here, but these boundaries are, here's that willow tree. It's just growing right out of a swamp there. But the boundaries and their importance is that they, much like this, there can be a fine defined line, but then there can be this area here where it's a bit gray. There's a bit of permeability of the natural world intruding back onto man's path, or rather maybe man's path intruding onto nature, and nature just doing its natural thing of to just really dominate everything. Sorry for the abrupt cut in here. If you're still watching at this point, thank you very much. I just realized that kind of as I was on this walk, I was gonna fill in some of the gaps, some of my trains of thought up ahead in the video there. I don't know if you can see it. It's there's a couple people coming, and I just, my awkwardness, I didn't want to be talking to the camera, and I think I just totally lost my train of thought. But where I was going with it, just to kind of finish the thought on the importance of boundaries, is that they're essentially a line in the sand where, whether it's your own behavior or thoughts or emotions, or somebody else's, or a condition of your life, of reality, a line in the sand of, I will accept this behavior to this degree. And, even if it is uncomfortable for you, it's like I can manage that discomfort. On the other side of it, though, it's, okay, this thing that's happened is unacceptable to me. I will have to do something about that. And there's a million and one reasons or things that may happen that you may not really like, or you may very much so like. And then a million and one different ways of dealing with that, but not to kind of quagmire it down. It's just the boundary would be that line in the sand. And then, in counseling, we can work together to help define for you where that line in the sand is. Maybe right now it's a big, wide path in the sand, and there's lots of wiggle room on either side, and you don't quite know where one thing leads to another, and there's some confusion there, or a lack of understanding. And over time, through discussion, it's, I might be pointing out things. Okay, it sounds like you are quite uncomfortable with that. Like, do you want to do something about that, or are you willing to live with that part of your life? Like, how much? It could also be something where, you're dealing with umpteen other things, and this, maybe you'll come back to it in the future. You'll deal with it then. It's an annoyance to you. You don't really like it all that much. However, other things on your list of priorities to sort out or figure out or work through are higher, and you only have so much time and energy in the day. But in essence, that's boundaries. One of the most important aspects that I can think of, if not the most important, is being honest with me as your therapist or counselor, or just anybody in the field in general. If people say things that, just for the sake of trying to sound impressive or embellishing things, I'm going to trust you that you're telling the truth. And so if things are skewed in some way, or there's not a truth behind them, whatever your truth is, I just want to know that. I don't want to know you kind of funneling your truth through something you think I would prefer you to say, is essentially what I'm getting at. Because then I just have a skewed understanding of you, and then it confuses me, because in time it's gonna show up. You're not gonna, if that's not you are going to, if you keep coming back and as I start to gain a sense of who you are, I'm gonna start to notice these discrepancies. Like, if you are just you, and you don't embellish or have mistruths or outright lie, like, you won't be able to keep up the same one for long. And I'm gonna ask, you said something 6 sessions ago, this, but it doesn't sound like that. Like there seems like a difference there. There's something that was left unsaid prior. It'll come out eventually. And if you gotta lie just to come in and there's not the trust in me yet with your story, that's okay. That's totally understandable. But expect it to come out. That's all I can say. Expect it to come out in time, and that's sometimes a very good thing. Just helping people build trust in themselves to be who they want to be in the world is one of the things that I don't know, I don't want to call it specialize in. It seems too clinical, but one of the things I help people find, I suppose, within themselves. Kind of my niche, like topic matter in and around that niche, I suppose, among others. But where was I going with that now? Oh, I can't lie though, it feels somewhat hypocritical to be out here saying just how nice it is to be out here in nature, off your devices, off your screens, just having some reflective thought, being with yourself for a bit, having some fun with yourself, if you will. And here I am on my phone the whole time, recording. It is I have put it away most of the time though when I walk by somebody, because it just feels a bit too forward. Like we're out here in this space and I'm just out here talking to my phone. But that's my own beliefs about it. Oh, it's always nice to come across a bench. That one doesn't have a nameplate yet, but I've been noticing those more and more lately, those nameplates on the benches and the little slogans that they say. I can't tell you one, honestly, off the top of my head that I necessarily remember, but there's been some times just sitting on a bench like that and, you're there with that slogan that that person or those people thought was deeply important to be inscribed on that. And so just sit there and reflect on that question sometimes can be valuable. And that one says supporter of regional parks. It doesn't have a slogan on it, but it's almost just some sort of fate or destiny or will, force, what have you, but placed you in that bench at that moment in time. And so what is the wisdom of these people that have came before me? Sometimes very valuable, very, very valuable. It's kind of just it's not like I do that every time, but it kind of begins to speak into a broader theme. I'll spin it around here. It begins to spin into the broader theme of oh man, see, like using technology sometimes it makes you forget your train of thought. Without the technology I wouldn't be able to do this, but it kind of interrupts that natural going for things that come up. We're talking about the benches and the it's kind of fate, things to reflect on. And then oh yes, reminding, acts of remembering. Much of something I find to string together and be quite independent of the person, this is somewhat helpful to remember. But as you go through and you identify these patterns that are not serving you, that are self-defeating, and they're there, you've identified them, put some labels on them or whatever, they're there, when you do that behavior, you don't feel good about yourself afterwards in a way that's not acceptable to you. And odds are, like, everybody's imperfect, and you're not going to identify these things and then they're just going to go away as soon as they're identified. These are habitual, these are things that for many, many reasons you have not been able to sort out in your life so far. And there's a lot of words you could use instead of sort out, so I'm just going to use it right now. And as you go through that process of change and changing into something different, something that you think is more meaningful to you, that brings you a sense of fulfillment, of that you're living with your purpose, or trusting yourself to go through into the unknown of your life, to face these things, it's not going to be a smooth sailing. And so what I'm getting at with that act of remembering, it's you're going to find yourself reflecting on the fact that, oh my God, I just re-engaged in that pattern that I've been sorting out, or I've been saying I don't want to do that for months now, and talking to this guy, and now I've gone done again, and I only even realized it. I did it an hour or two after it happened, or the next day, or the next week. And something I find valuable just to share with all clients, and just now onto Instagram and YouTube, but I find one of the most important aspects is it's just an act of remembering. Each time you remember, that's positive, that you even remembered it then. And it's like, the more often you can remember to think that way, that is growing in the direction that you want to. Reflecting on that thing, okay, now that you remembered you've done that, what might you be able to do differently next time? Let's digest that most recent situation and see where the pitfalls were, or see where I began to shift, or the thing that I don't appreciate happening is happening again. That's what it's like. And then remembering to go through that process, and maybe try out something new in the next time. There might be, it's like, okay, this happened and I made it past these, like, sometimes I love science. I love biochemistry and all that. And if you know anything about chemical reactions, like an enzyme, like a reaction might happen at a certain temperature, at a certain rate. Thing like a car is rusting or something, oxidizing. And if you add an enzyme in there, it will normally speed up the process of that. I think it can also slow it down too. But that can speed up that process and lower the action potential of that reaction to happen. And so kind of over time in working together, it's like, okay, you're almost developing this enzyme of mental tools and techniques of things to look out for, that's like, you will remember it, you'll be able to catch it, like in a sooner moment, that moment when either things begin to slip, you begin to feel, like, normally it's the emotion first, you'll begin to feel quite uncomfortable, and then the emotion, that's your gut, that's kind of literally your nature. And then after that, though, that's when the thoughts come in. That's kind of where we work to be like, okay, what's happening there? What's happening there? Why? And really, very simplified. It's like, why are those things happening? What's your beliefs about that? Why you feel this way, or having this reaction, or whether it's something you did, something other people did, something life threw at you. Why do you believe it's that this is happening and you're feeling this way. And, you know, it can be a lot more in depth than, you know, this terrible things happened and I'm just shooting another quick amendment to that point. So as you are, you know, you're remembering these things sooner than reflecting on them, or rather remembering to reflect on that most recent event, what happened, you know, why do I believe that happened, the beliefs around it, you know, all part of that discussion, the thoughts, and then it's like, okay, then what behavioral action, and whether that's speaking to somebody else the way that you speak to yourself, an actual physical reaction, you know, getting up just as thirst would drive one to go get some water, very similar to that. That's really the nature of the work. It's, you know, the emotions are the signal, what thoughts are twirling around there. Sometimes it can be quite the whirlwind. One leads into the next with no semblance of like understanding. It's happening too quick. The emotions are kind of, you know, adding fuel to that fire, or just dampening it right down so there's no fire at all. There's no energy to engage in these thoughts or what have you. And then really working with those thoughts and then the behaviors associated with them that we think might help out with that, you know, in the future. And whether or not that actually is helpful, you know, there's no guaranteed intervention or behavior someone can do in every single particular circumstance that will guarantee success. However, it's more so, it's a lot more nuanced than throwing spaghetti at the wall. But it's like, okay, what if you were to try this? Let's walk through if you'd be willing to do that, yay or nay. If yay, then okay, let's walk through like that moment, like insert it into that moment that we've identified as kind of where things start to slip. And, you know, for next time, if you remember to do that, that's great. You'll definitely learn something. You know, these interventions or these behavioral interventions will be very nuanced and specific to that moment. And, you know, whether or not it works or not, we can't tell. But if you try, it's very similar to that Albert Einstein quote, the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. It's, you know, the things that you've tried so far have not yielded a result that you'd accept, and for a multitude of reasons. So let's introduce this new thing into that, see what happens. Kind of over time, you know, maybe that is a little piece that was missing from the overall broader strategy, and that gets you around that friction point. And or perhaps it's not, there's still some other things needed, but, you know, in doing that new thing, you'll certainly learn something. You know, why did it fail, or why wasn't it as successful with these other things? You know, that's all brought up in the therapeutic dialogue. Why do you believe that it worked or didn't work, in conjunction with what you've tried already, with what you know about this situation, your beliefs about it? That is the essence of it. And hopefully I said something like that before my camera cut out, but thank you. I have no idea when my phone cut out or where I was at in that stream of thought. My phone storage filled up, and I had to, I guess my podcast app was set to auto download every episode I follow, and so there was like 30 gigabytes of podcasts taking up a bunch of space. Oh, that's just like, if, you know, one of the things that gets me the most frustrated is technology sometimes. Like getting it to work, getting it, you know, the passwords. You save something on autofill, and then, you know, every time it's like, okay, now you need to put a new password on the site, and it saves something else, but it didn't actually save it where you expect it to, and it's just a big, like, it's like there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's so frustrating. yeah, like I'm like friggin' technology, I'll tell you, it does so much for it, and I love the use of technology. But when it goes and it's not working right, oh my goodness, that's frustrating. This reminds me, I remember one time I smashed up my my laptop. I was in first year, I would have been in the 4th year of my university. I would have been 21, and 21 or 22, something like that. And this computer was doing something like, it would do this thing where it would just freeze and not work, and it would take like way too long to reboot. Like I'm talking like an hour or two. And I don't know how much of this memory is true or false, or but there was very likely a important paper due or something like that, and then it did it on me. And I remember it was like the final time, and I remember just slamming the lid down on it. It was an old HP laptop. Slamming the lid down on it, and just then taking my fist like a hammer, just wailing it, and yeah, the screen was destroyed. But yeah, no, it yeah, I haven't done that since, because I was like, now I gotta buy a new laptop. But yeah, it was time. That thing served me. It's on its last legs. But I've been MacBook ever since. My goodness, no complaints with MacBook laptops. I got a MacBook Air after that, and it lasted 5 or 6 years, and there's nothing really wrong with it. It was just starting to get a bit too slow for the level of computer stuff I was doing at the time. And so then I got the one that I currently use, and that thing, it just runs my whole business off of that. Can't recommend Apple MacBooks enough. I would not have assumed that in making this video today, I would have been talking about my laptop choice and that. But here we are. Yeah, we're in a nice little spot. See, I find that like we're in a nice little spot right now, just kind of going along. One thing I'm very surprised that you can't switch the video around while you're filming. That to me seems just like you can do it if you're on FaceTime, so it's not hardware, like, it's just a software thing. So I don't get that one bit. But yeah, we're out here. We're just walking around. What is walk and talk therapy? Well, as the name suggests, it's where you and your counselor would go out into the woods and on a trail like such as this, and rather than sitting in an office, the two of you will just walk side by side and have a chat. And the therapist will still be using all the same types of techniques, evidence-based practice while out and about. However, you're getting some movement in there. You're out there in nature. You could do it on the sidewalk too, around town, a bit more busy. And that introduces one of the aspects of it that is to be aware of, but the confidentiality aspect of it. When someone comes into the space, into the counseling room, we can make sure that they're not going to encounter somebody out in public that knows them, someone that they wouldn't want to know is going for a walk with the walk and talk therapist. So it does introduce that risk to your confidentiality. With that risk, though, does the risk outweigh the reward? If you're being indoors for therapy, sitting in a room, talking one-on-one with a therapist just isn't your style, and you'd rather you want some help with your problems, or maybe perhaps not problems, but you want some help with these things that concern you and take away from your quality of life. But you wouldn't go sit in a room, but you would go for a walk. Well, maybe that person is willing to accept that level of risk to their confidentiality in exchange for the benefit that can come with counseling. I work with people who are stuck in their heads quite a bit all day, and the emotions that are coming up frequently and at an intensity that they don't like, it's happening too much. And like, who do I work with? I work with people who want to find more purpose or meaning in their life day to day, to find some more satisfaction out of life. They might have a very important decision to be made, or series of decisions, and are quite conflicted in which one to decide. There's a lot of pieces, there's a lot of values at play on each side of this decision. Which ones are best for me? And looking for a supportive place to have some of these conversations and have somebody with them, have somebody to have them with. I like working with people's values, their what they quite literally value in life. How can we align the way that you think, feel, and behave is more attuned to those and more intentional day to day. Another thing that I help people with is career counseling. Finding a worthwhile career, I find it blends a lot of these three, like values-based work. There's decision making, living with purpose and intent. That spins off a lot into counseling. Like, it's not just interpersonal or relational, familial things where these things exist in. It's people's careers are a big part of that too. How do they relate their career with their family? Like, there's often a lot of ties. They might love their job, but the schedule conflicts with their family, or they really don't like their job, but they don't want to put their family at risk. Should they make a decision that would have them change careers at some point, and they go without an income for a series of time? Some of these are tricky. Like, there's financial stress in there. There's the fear of failure. Could be, regret about a past decision that led you to that moment. There's a lot there to it. It's, there might be, or it might have nothing to, you love your career, the schedule works out great, and you're there for something completely unrelated to that. There's a lot of things. You don't always need another coffee or a different productivity hack. Sometimes you need this. And a couple of tools that I'm going to show you right now. One of the healing aspects of nature is actually the fractal imagery of it. It goes from a huge trunk to a smaller branch, but that resembles the trunk, to an even smaller branch as it goes smaller and smaller and smaller. As it goes smaller and smaller and smaller. And then until eventually it's a leaf, which has its own series of branching and veining structures. It's very satisfying to the human mind. It helps calm us down. Another aspect of nature that's really helpful for people is just the fact that it has this seemingly unlimited capacity to take it all in, and the unchanging nature of it. So you can divulge one of the darkest truths or go through one of the most difficult moments in your life doing it around nature and seeing that the stream over there remains to flow, it continues to flow. The sun and the clouds are moving about, the trees are still. There's this almost, it can just absorb it all. It can take it all in. So you can, even if it doesn't say a whole lot back, and sometimes it does, but you know, it'll take it all, and you can get it off your chest. It's not going to say no. It's not going to stop you from speaking your truth. It's really nice seeing the snow-topped mountains. They're right over there, and it's hardly even the tops of them anymore. It's pretty much the whole mountains at this point. This is my first winter here, and so it'll be interesting to see what it's like. Last winter, by my standard, was quite mild. It didn't snow a lot, so yeah, we'll see what it's like. Always look forward to the winter. I like being in a place where there's proper seasons. I don't know what it is. There's the cadence of life and that rhythm of life. There's decay and renewal, and you know, the height of life, and then the darkness. It's all I think going through that cycle is rather fun. Each season is distinct. You know, it affects one's thoughts and emotions. So I like, even in the winter though, like, part of the reason why I want to make this video is just to let you know really that with walk and talk counseling, even though the weather is getting worse on us and there's going to be, you know, snow on the ground sticking here pretty soon, I'm still offering walk and talk counseling. And so, you know, throughout the winter, of course, if there's a terrible blizzard, we can reschedule your appointment. But yeah, if you'd like to walk and aren't afraid of bundling up a bit, wearing a coat, some mittens, a hat, some proper shoes, and coming out and going for a little stroll and having some walk and talk therapy or counseling, then let me know. I'm your guy. Let me know. I'm your Kelowna therapist, Tim Lamont. But yeah, I'm Tim Lamont from Unyielding Health and Wellness, Kelowna therapist here in town, and I hope you gained some benefit from this little video. I hope, like what's my intention with this phrase here? If you'd ever be interested in going for a walk instead of sitting on a couch or chair for therapy, I'm here and I'm willing to do that with you. Yeah, if you'd prefer to have your therapy sessions in the great outdoors, then certainly let me know. And if you'd rather do it in an office as well, that's fine too. But if you want to get out here, let me know. It's funny though, all the analogies you can draw to nature, and some of them are incredibly cliche, like, you know, the river doesn't stop for anybody. The river, like one drop at a time, you can carve your way through stone. And that's certainly true. And it's also a cliche. But I think it more so alludes to you get what you're looking for out here in nature. And whether or not you know you're looking for that thing or not, or some part of you that's unaware to you is. You know, there's this aspect of, you know, if you look at, see a stream as determined as it is to continue in the direction that it wants to go, and it's like, yes, I identify with that aspect of the stream. You know, you might just as much see the marsh and not really look twice at the river, but look at the marsh and sit there and contemplate. You know, it's this stillness to it, this stillness and richness to the swamp. That's more so what I need right now. For that, it just, yeah, maybe not a swamp. I don't know. Yeah, swamps are great. Just trying to think of a nice thing to say to somebody. You know, they're sitting there. You know, just maybe they really appreciate the fact that it just is the swamp. It's just there. It doesn't really change. Like, there's a certain perimeter where it's quite stable. There's some muckiness to it. But yeah, on that topic though of you get what you're looking for, I personally do believe that. Like, if someone's out there always looking for one particular thing. It comes back to their belief system. If they believe in how they interpret events, if they're always looking to interpret it a specific way, they're much more likely to find signs that correspond to that. And so in that sense, it's a looking at, okay, you want to be, like if someone has a particular goal in mind, it's like, how is, you've noticed that thing, if you've gone looking for that thing, and you've gone looking for that thing, this is where, right, without a specific example, it's almost harder. Like I think that's the issue with some of these analogies and like losing the mind. It's like thinking of a specific example off the cuff that's randomized. But if you're always out there looking for something in particular and you've predetermined the ending to a degree, it's that like your prediction is that this will happen, there's a much higher likelihood that will in fact happen. Or you'll perceive situations, whether it's someone's tone, the way that they looked at you, something that one might attribute to randomness or not think twice about it. You might attribute it to like some very poor fate. And it's up to you whether or not you want to continue believing things that way or not. Or how is it necessarily helpful towards your goals to continue to look out for that thing everywhere. And like at what cost is kind of what it gets to. It's like if you're, because I don't want to say something where it's like we're going to change your beliefs and you have to adopt something you don't want to do. That's not it at all. But it's really looking at how do certain thoughts, certain ways of seeing things help you or hinder you from reaching your goals. And you know, if you want to go out there and think that every person when you're driving, every person out there is horrible at driving except for me, which, you know, a lot of us have that one, right? And you're in a rush to get somewhere and you're driving around, you know, and you're perceiving everybody's out there just to slow you down. If they had better skills, you'd be able to get to your destination faster. It's on them, right? But in this example, it's like, well, what if you just, let's even say that is the case and you want to maintain that belief, right? It's like, well, how can you adjust to that? Okay, I leave the house 10 minutes earlier, right? For everything. It's just a standard or a principle that I have because I don't like to feel rushed. Those other ignorant people out there on the road are gonna stifle my ability to get where I want to go. So because, and there's almost nothing I can do to change all road users. So I will then reflect back on my own behaviors, right? Now you might arrive at the same conclusion, honestly, though, by saying, geez, yeah, I don't know how helpful it is to say that everybody else is a poor driver. And that doesn't seem to solve my issue. I continue to be late. Like that explanation doesn't work anymore for me. And so you might then think to yourself, okay, well, you know, am I not that good? Am I a person who needs more time, organizational time skills? I might not even know what it is. You know, what's that, like, why am I always running late? It's not those other people. You know, I don't know, but I'd be willing to just try something that, you know, has been shown to help people manage their time better. You know, I don't know what's going to help me, but I'll try a few things and I will just talk about it. You know, maybe you have no idea, but in the act of talking, and perhaps you've seen several times throughout the course of this video today, you know, one thought leads into another, sometimes, like as I've been speaking, you go down these rabbit holes with your mind, and you're reflecting on things and why they happen, these abstractions. There's that little black squirrel. And it's that process that can help spur new solutions to the same old problems. That's right. It's identifying, what's the problem? I'm feeling some way, I'm thinking some way, I'm doing something I don't like to do. It doesn't make me feel very good. It makes me think pretty poorly of myself. Okay, why is that the case? Is it me? Is it something someone else is doing? Is it the world? Right? That's where the thoughts, why do I believe that this is happening right now? And then closely followed, perhaps, with a few questions in between is, why do I believe that that's happening? And, what can I do about it? Am I willing to do that thing? It's, right, but you gotta give yourself the chance to think about it, right? If you distract yourself, kick the can down the road, you are going to be essentially delaying your potential, of what you could be, the life you could have, by kicking this can down the road, figuring out this problem with life. There was a quote that I saw, I don't know how long ago it was, but it was, what was it? Like kicking the can down the road. Life has a way of presenting the same choice or crossroads or lesson. I think it was lesson. Life has a way of presenting the same lesson to you until you learn that lesson. And everybody's allotment of lessons to learn is different. And it's up for you to make sense and to trust what you've learned is the truth for you, essentially. And it's sometimes like counseling can almost get into the realm of it's quite the philosophical realm, I find. How do you live the good life? What is having a good life? What's that mean for me? Right? These big questions. In the past, there's been, often the answer would be religion, right? Like some sort of God or fate, prescribed it that way. There's nothing wrong with that. To each their own to think. But it's how do you make sense of that in relation to you and how you're feeling about the world, about the way things happen? Right? I think part of it too is just as a society, we've gotten a little more distant towards ourselves or towards each other. And so sometimes, for all the things that priests did wrong, they did have confession. And I've never been in that or know anything about it, but with having a person in the community that you could come say some difficult things to and confide with and hope to have a better chance, hope to I can do it again. I know this thing about myself now. I will go off and try not repeat that if I can, because I feel poorly when I do, right? It's very similar to that in that regard. I saw a quote too that was, counselors are the priests in a post-industrialized society. And in some respects, I can, in the fact that people confide with us, we help them figure out what exactly is, that line that we talked about earlier, between things that they think are helpful to them and things that aren't so helpful. And whether that's in the context of religion or not, it's kind of regardless, like that's the similarity. Getting up close to the road though now. I don't know how many more I'll continue to record on the street, but it's been quite an interesting walk. It's gonna be cool to go back and walk or watch through this and just see. You know, it's almost like a video diary or something. But I hope you've enjoyed coming on this little walk in the woods with me here. And if you're interested at all in walk and talk counseling, my name's Tim Lamont. I'm a therapist here in Kelowna, and I offer walk and talk therapy.